Hampshire in 2000 and in 2008?
Because he had appeal for independent voters who are able to participate in the Republican primary in New Hampshire. And so much of the debate in the Republican Party today, Rachel, is that, it's a sign of weakness, right? That you're a rhino, that you have the ability to attract independent voters, people who aren't registered. And Republicans ought to look at that as a virtue. This will be an important state in the general election, as 3 electoral votes matter in a close election. So for President Obama, for whomever the Republican nominee is, this will be a state that they're back at campaigning in the fall, and you want to be able to have broad appeal with independent voters.
So what does that say about John Huntsman tonight? Obviously, Huntsman is staking it all on New Hampshire, but there's a lot of hostility to him. Ed just handed this to me. Donald Trump tweeting tonight, New Hampshire has a major decision to make today. Hopefully we won't have to hear any more Mandarin spoken in future debates.
Well, that's all about Huntsman being instantaneously rejecting of the Trump debate. It's all personal with Donald.
Yeah.
Huntsman was out there instantly saying, that is an absurdity. I will not do it. Huntsman said it was beneath the dignity of the presidency.
His response was LOL when he was asked if he would participate.
And so here's Donald.
Well, what kind of finish does Huntsman have to make a run at South Carolina? What does he have to do tonight? I think that's a big variable in all of this. This is a guy that has spent a ton of time and money. He's bet the farm on New Hampshire. If he doesn't finish in the top 3, he's not going to finish first, but if he is second or third, it's going to have to be a good number for him to continue on.
Well, I, for one, do not count Ron Paul. I just don't count him. He's a renegade libertarian who should not be counted in Republican returns. He's just this joke that's sitting there, a statistical screw-up in the middle of the puddle. So, second, I don't know what he's going to do. He's been polling at second, third. So to me, it's what is Huntsman's the size of his vote. Is he third? Is he fourth? Maybe fourth is relevant this time because of Paul, but absolutely in the second, third zone there somewhere.
Chris in Manchester, you want to jump in here?
With Lawrence completely about his electability to anything ever again, but I do think there's something that's quantitative here. If you look at the Republican Party's hawkishness in the last 2 cycles, I think it's beginning to fade dramatically. I think there's real war fatigue, and not just in Iowa. We're going to see it tonight, I think. If you look at these numbers now in our exit polls, if you don't even go to the exit polls, just ask yourself, if you add up Ron Paul's number tonight, who's clearly anti-war, with Huntsman, who says, let's get the heck out of Afghanistan, and definitely let's not go to a trade war with China, you have perhaps up to 40-some or 45%, maybe I think up to 45% looking at it, who are basically saying enough of this W stuff, enough of this macho man hawkishness around the world. We have had it with wars. I think that's significant. I don't know if it'll continue down south, Rachel and Lawrence and the rest of you, but I do think if you get a sizable minority up here, almost half of the voters voting for anti-war candidates, that's a development, important one.
I think that when we saw Ron Paul has been running for president for a very long time. I think that the Ron Paul voters were much less representative of the rest of the Republican electorate before this year. This year, I think that there is some competition for Ron Paul voters among the other candidates. You obviously disagree, but that's
I don't think if you took actual Republican voters out of the Ron Paul number and said these are the people who will reliably show up for the Republican nominee, it's probably half of them, and maybe less.
But I discount Ron Paul for, I agree with Lawrence in discounting him for different reasons, because I think where he is anti-war internationally, I don't think he's liberal or moderate in terms of domestic policy. And when we look at the issues that voters say they were concerned about, we need to see if it was the war or if it was the economy. We need to match what the voters are saying with how they voted, because if the war is not a big factor in their vote, then his anti-war position should not be inflated. You must remember, Paul is anti-war, but he's also for states' rights. He voted against Martin Luther King's birthday, so you can't make him just a liberal. And if I'm going in there and my mind is on the economy, don't say that I'm going to vote for Paul because I'm against the war, but I agree with all of his economic policies, and that's what I'm thinking about.
I do think that for John Huntsman.
Sorry, Chris. If you go to a Paul rally, you see a lot of young people who are totally anti-war. They know why they're there. They don't like these wars. I mean, that's a prominent, perhaps overwhelming reason why they're with Ron Paul, is because they hate these wars. It isn't just something they've overlooked, Reverend. This is their issue, and why they're for Paul.
They're socially liberal, fiscally responsible. irresponsible, and they don't want to go overseas to war. Where Ron Paul is growing, he got 18,000 votes the last time in New Hampshire 4 years ago. He's growing in the young demographic. He got a good number of young voters in Iowa. It looks like he's going to get a good number of young voters in New Hampshire. Sooner or later, the Republican Party should at least have a conversation with Mr. Paul about how are you getting all these young voters, because that is going to be important in the general.
And how does a Republican strategist answer that question? I mean, how do you look at the Ron Paul voters?
I think to a large degree what is animating Ron Paul voters is not reconcilable with whomever is going to be the Republican nominee. And I think you can't reconcile some of these positions. Going back to John Huntsman, I do think that tonight he needs to finish in second place or be very, very, very close to second, almost a virtual tie between third and second. He wants to go into South Carolina. What's important for these candidates, not named Mitt Romney, is for Mitt Romney to lose one of these first four contests. And they're looking for a Mitt Romney loss in South Carolina. So I think what you'll see John Huntsman do is spend his time on the coast in South Carolina, fast-growing Horry County, which is Myrtle Beach, Charleston, the Kiowa area. You have a lot of Northeast transplants from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, who have retired down there. And if he's able to pull down Mitt Romney's margins there, and you see the conservative base of the party reject Romney's candidacy in the western part of the state, and Romney has delivered his first loss, on top of the mistakes he made this week, which I think are the first substantive arguments, right, that advance he may not be as electable as we thought he is, right, that gives people motivation to keep the contest going down into the later winter, into the early spring.
But looking further than South Carolina, no one's put the resources into Florida the way Romney has.
Right.
So, I mean, he's put out almost a $2 million buy-in there already. So, I mean, it's that marathon run that he's making is going to be tough to overcome for these other candidates.
All of these other candidates are looking to try to get this race to a binary choice. They're trying to get it down to Mitt Romney versus me, and they think they can take them on a one-on-one contest. You look at Florida, it's $1 million per week advertising state. Mitt Romney's been up there for a couple of weeks. No other candidate has the ability to do that so far. But all of these candidates, for them, hope springs eternal. If they can narrow this down to a one-on-one contest between Romney, they believe the money will come, and they believe they'll be able to endure, maybe catch him in the later primaries.
If Romney gets knocked down enough so it looks like there is a potential alternative to him, the money will flow like water.
Absolutely.
For that other candidate. All right, coming up in the next half an hour, we're going to be hearing from Tim Pawlenty, former presidential candidate who got out early after the Ames, Iowa straw poll. He is now supporting Mitt Romney, plus former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge, who is backing John Huntsman. That's on the way. MSNBC's coverage of the New Hampshire primary continues in just a moment.
I think one of the problems of the country is that we've all been basically excused. Go grab your tax cuts, let somebody else fight in the Army. Well, I sometimes think about the soldier who's on post right now, maybe in Afghanistan, in a terrible place, scared to death. And maybe one of the things we owe them is that everybody do their part in this country, including paying fair taxes, contributing to this country in their own way.
Hello, Todd. Just calling to let you know I'm giving you the silent treatment.
So you're calling to tell me you're giving me the silent treatment?
Yeah.
Jen, this is like the 8th time you've called.
No, it's fine. My family has free unlimited mobile to any mobile minutes from AT&T, so I can call all I want.
I don't think you understand how the silent treatment works.